Greetings, everybody, and Merry Christmas. We're continuing our devotion series in the Gospel of Luke, looking at the first coming of Christ, but particularly looking at it through the eyes of Mary, looking at her choices, her experiences, her fears, the arc of her story in the Gospel of Luke. It begins with the angel Gabriel announcing the birth of Jesus. Continues with Elizabeth, and then Mary has this encounter with God and this wonderful prayer. Now, the author of the gospel turns his attention somewhat away from Mary in specific and talking about the details of Jesus' birth, the fulfillment of prophecy. But Mary is still in there, and I want to look at her continued story, how she continues to react to what's happening around her as we come to the fulfillment of the prophecy, the birth of Jesus. We're going to see what we can learn from her as she faces the hardship of Roman rule, the indignities of a crowded city, the uncertainties of giving birth. We see her focused on the prophecy of the Lord, the promise of the coming Redeemer. Let me read Luke chapter 2, beginning in verse 1. In those days, a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be registered. This was the first registration when Quirinius was governor of Syria, and all went to be registered, each to his own town. And Joseph also went up from Galilee, from the town of Nazareth to Judea, to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and lineage of David, to be registered with Mary, his betrothed, who was with child. And while they were there, the time came for her to give birth. And she gave birth to her firstborn son, wrapped him in swaddling cloths, and laid him in a manger, because there was no place for them in the inn. And then a little bit later in verse 19 it says, "But Mary treasured up all these things, pondering them in her heart." You know, when expected things come our way, we don't always respond the best. Maybe it's not something unexpected, but maybe less than what we expected. Some situation that's less than ideal. Sometimes we don't have the best response. We're not in our best form. Sometimes these things send us over the edge. Now, I've been a part of many weddings. And as an officiant, I get to see the good, the bad, and the ugly. Sometimes it's a bride whose expectations of the day are just in the stratosphere. The flowers were the wrong hue. The bridesmaids weren't standing up straight during rehearsal. The flower girl isn't cooperating. It's less than what she wants, and it really gets to her. Sometimes it's a relative who doesn't like the match and makes his or her disapproval known, or the relative who's just drinking too much and makes a fool of themselves in front of everybody. Sometimes one of the wedding party, it's as simple as this, locks their knees and they pass out during the wedding ceremony. And the experience of the wedding for the bride, the groom, the parents, it's less than what we hoped for. And it really drives us crazy. Mary is having her first child. What was your picture of that moment? How did you imagine that experience? And then how did it match with your reality, your experience of it happening? I would imagine that Mary might have seen herself in her own home, surrounded by familiar things that would comfort her, surrounded by family. And it would be a warm moment of celebration. But instead, she's in a crowded and strange city. She's not even in a cheap hotel room, but in a stable, and all the smells that go along with it. You know, we often find ourselves in less than ideal circumstances. We approach life's milestones hoping for at least a brief experience of the sweetness of life, and what we get is the smell of dung and the annoyance of flies in our face. We have this picture of Garrison Keillor's Lake Wobegon, where all the women are strong and all the men are good looking and all the children are above average. And instead, our experience is kids yelling at each other, being in marriage with its tedious and repetitive rituals. Our house is too small or needs too much work. Our job is less than fulfilling. The moments of our lives rarely play out as expected, and we can be filled with disappointment, maybe even resentment. And it's understandable. Maybe even it's a part of our grieving process and letting go of our dreams. But if we stay in that place of resentment and disappointment, it's a terrible waste. The ways we dress up milestones in our lives, in our imaginations, has become a distraction to the thing itself. At the end of the wedding, no matter how the ceremony went, there's a marriage. There's a life that's beginning together, this couple. At the end of a labor, there's a baby. And when Mary gave birth, the Lord had come into the world. The Lord had come into the world. It came in less than ideal circumstances. But if Jesus can enter into this world in this very ordinary, maybe even less than ideal way, that he can endure that because he loved me, I can endure less than ideal circumstances out of love for him. It doesn't earn his love. It's just appropriate to respond that way. This Christmas might not be your ideal Christmas, but there are good things in it. Endure the less than ideal so that you can have the real thing. Love of family. The love of God. Bless you all, and Merry Christmas.